Hello everyone, RFG here with a review for MOTORSLICE, an action-adventure platformer that has an emphasis on parkour-based movement and the use of a chainsaw as your main weapon for combat. Available on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. Developed by Regular Studio and published by Top Hat Studios Inc., you'll be in control of Slicer P and Orbie as you battle autonomous construction equipment while you traverse your way through a dangerous post-apocalyptic environment. Beginning with P arriving at her destination, an array megastructure, and receiving her orders to destroy every machine within, things quickly go awry when her accompanying orb drone unit breaks down. After some repair work from P, Orbie, the newly given name that's given to you as the Orb unit, and P will be under your control, with P as the primary playable character performing physical actions as Orbie's main role becomes the controllable camera. There's a bit more to what other functions Orbie has, but I'll get into that later. As the main playable character, P is pretty agile, and most of MOTORSLICE's platforming is based on her agility and parkour abilities. While a lot of Traversal is based around simple running, sliding, and jumping, there's also a large amount of wall running along side walls and short wall climbs. Wall running and climbing are both easy to execute, as all it takes is pressing the jump button and holding a direction towards a wall to run for a limited distance alongside it, and pressing jump while aiming directly up front a wall to climb at a short distance. Letting go of the direction you're holding while side wall running will cancel her run, but wall climbs will always be within a limited height. Wall jumping is another ability that will get used frequently and is mostly as easy to control. Simply pressing the jump button while wall running will have P jump at a forward angle away from the wall she was running on, while she'll jump directly behind her when wall climbing. You do have some control over the direction you jump off from walls, so the direction you wall jump from is essential to progressing in MOTORSLICE, as wall jumping repeatedly can be necessary to make it through a variety of obstacles you come across, and controlling where you land is equally important. Finding a safe spot to land is based on fall height. Falling from too high can be fatal, but at certain heights will cause P to stagger for a short time. Holding the slide button while falling at non-fatal heights will let her perform a smooth landing after hitting the ground, which avoids landing stagger or can also keep up her momentum. The slide button gets other uses, as she can utilize it to slide under objects to keep her momentum going, or occasionally get under low objects to crawl through spaces, fitting as part of her adventure toolkit rather than a highlight of parkour abilities. Instead, her parkour skills will be put more on display throughout other parts of the megastructure, as P will use them to reach and walk along wall cracks, balance on pipes, swing from poles, climb up and down stakes, and more. When she's in these parkour states, P or the controls will adjust accordingly. Walking along wall cracks is based on her directional input rather than camera. P will automatically balance herself when on pipes. Depending on the pole, she can move alongside them or turn around to swing in the opposite direction. And when on stakes, she'll jump behind her, similar to wall climbing. Knowing how she'll move in these situations can let you focus on what to aim for next, as P can connect from certain parkour states to another, jump from one state to reach other parkour objects, let go to lower herself to another one, or can aim to fall on the ground. But like I mentioned earlier, fall height is a determining factor of survivability. P doesn't really have a health value. She either can land safely or fall to her doom. Fortunately, death isn't usually a major setback, which does feel fair, as after a death, the game will place you back almost immediately to a safe location, depending on what obstacles are nearby. This is the same case for other ways you can die, like getting into contact or falling into the many hazards or traps within the megastructure. There are no game overs either. It's just a simple matter of, if you die, you restart somewhere safe, and if you're in the middle of a long fall or about to fall into a trap, you can hold down the retry button to have you retry a section right away. That somewhere safe doesn't always mean that your progression through a certain area is cleared, meaning that sometimes you may have to repeat part or most of a sequence you made it past before you come across a retry point. These points are usually spaced apart fair enough that it shouldn't be too frustrating if you come across a tough area to get past, and sequences that contain machine enemies tend to have the most discernible retry points. P's mission is to destroy every machine she comes across, and her chainsaw gives her a small range of attacks to use. She can slash repeatedly by constantly pressing the attack button. Holding the attack button down and then letting go unleashes the charge attack, and she has a jump attack. On top of that, each of her attacks have secondary uses. P's basic attacks can parry and deflect some enemy attacks back at a machine, her charge attack can bypass an enemy's defense, and her jump attack can be used to completely shift her direction in the air. These secondary effects can be essential to use, and defeating enemies is often necessary to progress the game, as they can get off access to new areas until each one is destroyed. If you're having trouble finding other enemies preventing you from progressing, you can turn on VR Scan to locate other ones that are around. Knowing where enemy machines are is important, as most enemy attacks are a one-hit kill, but you can avoid their attacks by using the slide button to perform a dash roll, and holding the focus zoom button allows Orbie to lock onto the target to help you avoid losing sight, or to help make parries and deflects easier to aim. Sometimes enemy motors will be in enclosed dark areas, where you can turn on Orbie's flashlight to make spotting them easier, along with using it for general navigation through them. To further help with Orbie's navigation abilities, you can lens blink to clear excess dirt that builds up on the camera. And while that clears up most of Orbie's functions, P herself has one more main parkour/attack skill to help her traverse the megastructure and to defeat enemies: her MOTORSLICE skill. Holding the attack button on the side of certain orange surfaces allows P to carve a path through areas either horizontally or vertically, with no limit to how long she can stay in this state. So long as there is an orange surface to MOTORSLICE along, you can do it indefinitely. She can also slightly control her movement while MOTORSLICing. So if she's slicing along horizontally, she can adjust her position up or down, and she can alter her movement to the left or right while slicing vertically. Similarly to while running and climbing, P has the ability to jump away from surfaces while MOTORSLICing by pressing the jump button. Letting go of the attack button while slicing will have her drop. However, you can adjust her direction so she can swap between vertical or horizontal slicing while still in the air. And if the next available surface after she's slicing is a wall, she'll automatically adjust the way she leaves her position to a wall run when slicing horizontally, or a wall climb when slicing vertically. Certain machines can only be defeated via MOTORSLICing, so it's necessary to have an understanding of knowing when it can be used, not to mention that this is the only way you'll be able to deliver damage to the bosses of the game. These massive autonomous machines have segmented health bars that appear at the top of the screen, functioning as separate parts that need to be sliced individually. However, to get to those parts requires much of the parkour platforming needed in most other sections of the game. Whether it's while running, climbing, or pole swinging that culminates in MOTORSLICing out each health bar, bosses generally offer the sorts of cohesive puzzle platforming segments that make up a lot of MOTORSLICE's best moments, though it might just be more obvious to notice in boss fights. While the end of these battles are generally satisfying to see, chapters of the game don't finish right then and there. Instead, they end after a short sequence of platforming that usually makes use of a technique or two that make up a bulk of that chapter before you move on to the next. That's generally how the progression of MOTORSLICE works. You're introduced to a chapter that proclaims a theme, you set to complete platforming, parkour, and combat portions, which are sometimes combined together, eventually get to a boss, and finish the chapter. This is designed in a mostly linear style of direction, and that does tend to be visible with pathways that can be led by objects that are accentuated with orange coloring, but the layouts of each section can be pretty large, so you can see alternate paths that are possible to take, even if they will eventually converge in a chapter. The linearity doesn't take away from the overall challenge of the game, as progression isn't just about figuring out where to go, since it does require a decent amount of precision platforming to make it through MOTORSLICE, though that doesn't mean there isn't enjoyment to be found in exploring the environment. Part of that experience is collecting lost orb drones. These can be used as shields, or batting them into enemy machines to stun them, but are meant to be deployed. Most of these drones are hovering in difficult to reach or hidden parts of the megastructure and can only be deployed through nearby triangulation zones. You can see the outlines of these zones after obtaining a drone, but you can also use your scanner to find their location without one. I should mention that getting the orb drones to a triangulation zone isn't always easy, especially since dying or retrying resets the drone back to its initial position. Some of these drones are part of time challenges where you must collect a number of them before being able to deploy them all together, where missing any or running out of time means you'll have to try again. Finding slack off spots are another optional objective. During these breaks, P shares her inner thoughts with Orbie that occasionally add a bit to the lore or just add some humor to the game. These spots are located throughout each chapter, and you can use your scanner to scout them out. After P shares her thoughts, you'll be able to respond as Orbie between two different choices at each break. Slack off spots aren't too hard to track down, and there's usually one that's easy to find at the end of a chapter. While collecting the additional orbs and taking break times with P adds to the overall experience, the core gameplay is really where I found the most enjoyment from MOTORSLICE. I mentioned before that the boss battles are where you can see that the parkour platforming and how their segmented health bars form together to complete what feels like an overall puzzle, but I feel like there are plenty of other sections in MOTORSLICE that have a similar design intention, except in terms of flow. It might be easier to see that similarity in how momentum can create a sense of cohesiveness between these segments, but it may be more difficult to notice, especially when compared to how boss battles are more focused in scope. Part of the reason for that can be because of the precision needed to get through many sections that do require more concentration, and other times it may be because of how large the environments within the megastructure you're exploring are. MOTORSLICE does an impressive job of making you feel small when you should feel small, but knows when to dial that back to keep you from being overwhelmed or when it's necessary to help you focus, and has the sense to remind you often enough to take a look at the big picture. Its indoor spaces may have that compact feel that can let you handle each room like area one at a time, but can sometimes have a connected series of precision platforming sequences where using momentum keeps you from having to repeat a difficult section. While its outdoor locations may compel you to scope out its entirety to consider where the end goal is, or might only let you see enough to keep you curious about how much of a chapter is left, despite still showing off the monstrous size of a portion of the megastructure. But that's what makes it impressive. The scale of a section you're in, or whether you can see the end of it or not, doesn't determine how hard it'll be to get past it. What matters is when you'll be able to figure out how you can progress, because at times, some areas do feel like puzzle pieces forming together. For me, that was worth the struggle of certain difficult segments, but that does mean that there are portions of the platforming that aren't easy, because MOTORSLICE's gameplay at times does come across like a genuine mix of puzzle and precision platforming. P herself controls fine, but I can see how some players could have issues, particularly while in proximity of walls, since you need to control her direction when approaching them to get a wall run or climb. This does also apply to MOTORSLICE's direction, which is determined by the way she's facing. You might have these same issues in boss encounters, since these are mostly platforming challenges and that will likely lead directly to a death, but that's not usually too much of a setback. If you are having trouble figuring out how to approach a boss, you usually get a chance to ask for a hint upon a retry. Most other combat situations shouldn't be too hard to get past, as the most common enemies you come across have relatively simple attacks to look out for, but if a combat section is proving to be difficult, it's more likely to be due to when some platforming is involved or if there are other hazards around. Whether you're struggling through either of these types of encounters or not, these segments do offer fast-paced engaging music tracks. A couple of other themes are present, and while what's there is good, it is pretty sparse. P herself is fully voiced and sounds great, though a good portion of her dialogue will be heard in the optional slack-off moments. Some of these slack-off instances do contain information for parts of the MOTORSLICE world, though whenever P explains these details, it'll often be in cryptic wording or phrasing, but what story elements you do learn throughout the game is intriguing and surprisingly satisfying to experience, even if it's partly because it feels like there is room for it to expand in the future. It helps that the gameplay mechanics are also interesting to experiment with, as you're consistently being taught how to apply P's skill set throughout most of the game, with later chapters still finding ways to add to its puzzle platforming style direction. There's not much in terms of replay value for those who may be interested in extra exploration, but the game is fairly open in its level structure, with some optional routes I spoke of before already built into the level design. However, if you are interested in replaying or speedrunning the game, besides just the laid out alternate paths, you actually can utilize P's full skill set from the start. The game may explain certain abilities even in the mid or late chapters, but there's no restriction from using them from the beginning, which opens up possibilities for replayability utilizing all of her skills. The chapter and checkpoint select options should also help with anyone looking to optimize routes for each chapter. MOTORSLICE's use of size and scale might be one of its most noticeable traits, but the way it's handled is in ways that feel thoughtful and sensible. Its precision platforming aspects may get frustrating for some, but those who stick with it should be able to appreciate how the parkour-based movement is worked into a puzzle platforming design. For those interested in a game with a bit deeper focus on combat, that's not quite what's being offered here, though it does feature short engaging battles that have solid mechanics, which can flow into smooth platform gameplay. If you're worried about length or replay value, then take a look at your preferred store page to help decide if you think it's worth the price. Though for those looking for a 3D platformer with a core based on puzzle platforming and a decent deal of variety, then I encourage you to try it out. But that's it for me. Let me know what you think below. Thanks. Bye.